Have you ever been curious as to what a toy scam looks like? I woke up early in the morning, like I usually do, to go to the swap meet. And before I did, I saw a notification from eBay in my emails in regards to a Jurassic Park prototype. Of course, I had to look at it. And when I first looked at it, I was beyond shocked. But the more I look into it, the more and more red flags I see, and the more I realize how much of a dangerous scam this listing is. Normally, I wouldn't care about a listing like this, but this listing pissed me off so much that I thought it would be a decent reason to make a educational video as to how to spot something that is potentially too good to be true, and how you can look into more details in something to figure out whether something is fake or not. And very minor details when it comes to prototypes like this are extremely important to take to consideration, because even one little ding or one little thing that looks off, if you find one of those, you'll probably find 2, 3, or a lot more stuff. But you'll need to find probably one little detail to find the others, if that makes sense. Before we move on, please do not harass this individual. There are already people that have reminded him, like myself, that he has fake stuff and he is aware of it, so there is no reason to gang up on him. Let's now take a look at the listing itself. It's called Jurassic Park Chaos Effect 1998. I can't fucking say that because I'm stupid. Figure replica. Now, normally this would be a okay title if you were referring to one item and it was a fake or not real item. The picture, however, does not state a specific figure. The bigger issue is the other items. This individual created a YouTube channel where he claims he was able to get original Jurassic Park prototypes from the quote-unquote deepest, darkest parts of the internet and eBay. He also makes videos showcasing the items and giving some descriptions about the items, which aren't bad descriptions, and there is truth to them. The one thing that isn't true in this case, however, is the figures themselves being actually real. But let's take a closer analysis as to what the items he supposedly claims to own are. What all of these items are apparently Jurassic Park prototypes from multiple series in the Jurassic Park toy line. The first one I would like to mention is the Ultimate-osaurus. This was a figure planned to be released with the Jurassic Park Chaos Effect toy line and was going to be the main bad guy of the toy line, being featured in multiple ads and articles for the series. Despite being extremely prominent in a vast majority of merchandising and ads for this toy line, the figure itself never saw the light of day and is one of the holy grails of Jurassic Park toys and toy collecting in general. The last time an original one sold, it went for around $17,000. That is a really important detail, because this brings up the red flag one of the listing, which is if you have all of these super rare prototypes, especially ones that could sell for 17 grand alone, why would you put all of them in a bundle? Wouldn't you make a hell of a lot more cash if you sold them individually? I mean, if these were all real prototypes, you're looking at potentially 50 grand to almost $100,000 if you were to sell it properly. Now, let's look at the Ultimate-osaurus he claims to be real in his collection that he is trying to sell. Thankfully, this is the easiest one to spot as a fake, and a hilariously bad fake, if you will. Let's take a look at the head mold. It's just absolutely atrocious to look at. I mean, Ultimate Asaurus is an atrocious looking character, to be fair, but this even does him dirty. The line work and paint job are poor to say the least and very unprofessional. Unlike in a real Ultimate Asaurus, where the lines are clean, the paint job is professionally done. And you can also look at the head mold when it comes to the teeth, eyes, and, just overall look of the figure. You can tell the obvious quality difference between this phony of a figure and the real deal. Even if you were to look at one that's not painted, it's pretty obvious to tell which ones are real and which one is fake. But now things seem to get a little more complicated, and unless you have an eagle eye for detail and know what you're looking for, even some of these sharpest eyes would be fooled by these phony replica prototypes. Now let's look at the Eucopleus, or whatever the heck you want to call it, a scientific name I'm too stupid to pronounce, I'll be honest. Now, this is where things get extremely difficult to authenticate properly, but there are some key details we can look at. But just to give you context on this figure, this is another action figure that was planned with the Chaos Effect toy line and never released. This figure is so rare, as a matter of fact, there is only one known legit photo of it in existence. It is so rare. Which means that it probably doesn't even exist, as there has been no known samples to be found so far, until this individual has claimed to find one. For starters, let's look at the body of the fake versus real one. On the real one, it's really hard to tell how big this figure is, but one thing is for sure, the body is quite wide, and the armored colored yellow and red part of it on the body has a flat line going from one leg to the other. On the body of the fake one, you can see a curve on it, which is not prevalent in the original one. Speaking of the body, while we obviously don't know the size of the original one, it is quite obvious that the body type of the figure is just completely different from the original. You can look at the tail and see the tail is shorter. You can see the face on the fake one is more round, whereas on the original one, it's a little more of a curved rectangle, if that makes any sense. Also, if you look at the black kind of armory parts on the original, it's a lot more shinier. And to be fair, this could be something to do with the lighting of this photo, but Jurassic Park figures of this nature, especially original ones from the Kenner toy line, have a very plasticky shine to them that makes them kind of look cheap and high quality and professionally made at the same time. But if you want one of the biggest giveaways as to this being fake, take a look at the JP. On the fake one, there is only the JP, which is in a white. On the original, not only the JP looks fairly orange, but there's also other markings around it, which are not existent on this fake phony one. And since we're getting nitpicky, if you look at the front legs on the original, you can see the scales that are clearly in black, they are prevalent on the fake one, but they are not coated in black like the original. And lastly, the pattern on the armored part is way off on this fake phony one compared to the real one, which you can tell a lot more effort was put into. And if we wanted to get really nitpicky and completely shut down this person's whole career, if you look at the two big front spikes on the original, you can see that they're actually different, as one has a point to it and the other is chopped off. Whereas on the phony one, they clearly did not look at the photo properly when they were making this phony of a toy. The next video they uploaded is a 2-in-1, which is the Dilophospinus and the Dioncanus. I'm gonna butcher a lot of these, so feel free to roast me in the comments. Now, this first one is another mythological figure which is so unbelievably rare. There is only one catalog picture of it. Now, let's compare this phony to the badass original. Now, in this particular situation, when you look at the original and alleged real one side by side, they are pretty identical, and it is extremely hard to tell. However, this clown of a YouTuber made a fatal mistake that checkmates this thing being fake. However, I will get to that last, as I want to dissect and just have a little fun with this situation. Because the checkmate detail is not actually visible the way you are looking at it right now, and is more a fatal error by this YouTuber. Firstly, let's take a look at the hands. Now, the hands actually look pretty good when it comes to how they are structured. However, in the original, they are just a little more bent and more creepy looking. That could be the way it is blurred, but you can tell on the fake one, the fingers are out a little more. When it comes to the black circle around the tiny green eye, the black spot is a lot smaller on the original compared to the fake one, where the black spot is a lot larger. The random orange dimple, which appears on both, is also different. It's a lot bigger on the original one, whereas on the fake one, it just looks kinda pathetic. And the blue spot that holds it also looks fairly different. And speaking of interesting differences, the teeth being white is actually a problem and not correct, as the original, believe it or not, is cheaper in that regard and has gray teeth. If you look closely, they did not finish clearly with making the mouth of the character, or they intended it that way. And interestingly, it blends in better that way, which is why it's made by Kenner and not some phony. I was tempted to exclude this detail, but I'll just bring it up anyways. The colors of the fin parts are yellow on the fake and look a little more green on the original, but I'm gonna give this one a pass because the lighting on the original photo is just so gritty. It's kind of not really fair to make that comparison. So you get a pass on that one. What I'm not gonna let you slide with, and what I am going to horribly grill you on, is your fatal mistake of letting me look at the back of the dinosaur's leg. Can you see it? I'm gonna give you a couple seconds to see if you see the mistake. Okay, place your bets, place your bets. What do we think? Drum roll. What is it? What is it? If you look closely, do you see these kind of curvy lines around the legs? Interesting little detail, right? Typically, when 3D printers print a figure, they will create these curvature shapes, which means this motherfucker 3D printed this prototype. The next figure he shows off in this video is unbelievably insulting to claim to own. This is the Dilophospinus, and notice the only picture you are seeing in this video is a pre-production drawing. That is because this figure was never even produced and was only made it to the production stage, which means a figure of this dinosaur 99.9% does not exist. If this isn't a red flag for everything else in the rest of this video, I really don't know what is for you. This figure is so embarrassingly bad to look at, I'm not going to even bother pointing out the details, because just by one frame of looking at this atrocity, it is night and day as to how unbelievably fake this figure is. Does this really look like something Kenner would have even made in the prototype stage? Are you fucking kidding me? This looks like someone took a Sharpie and marked it all over, ruining the fucking toy. Next, you're gonna be looking at the, okay, you know what? I fucking give up. I don't know what the fuck I give up. For quick context, this is the exact same situation as kind of the other ones I've mentioned, another unreleased Chaos Effect figure that never came out, and like I said before, we only have a catalog shot of it. Now, the very first detail I want you to look at are his cheeks. Okay, you know what? Let me try that again. Look between his leg and his tail. You know, don't look too deep though. Notice this kind of black pattern that goes from his tail to his stomach and kind of around his legs. But if you look on the leg, it is a lot more prevalent on the original than it is on the fake. And on the fake, it's a little too far back for the pattern. The kind of subtle pimples on the torso and tail are also pretty different. On the original, the torso ones are a lot more together, whereas on the fake, they're a lot more spread out. This next detail I want to mention is the outline of the figure. If you were to take both these photos, make them fully white or black, and put them next to each other, you can kind of see a lot of inconsistencies with the fake versus real. The real one has a lot more of a stylized look to it, a straighter back despite having the curved shoulder, and a head that looks a little more like a raptor, whereas the other one looks like it just got finished being bullied at school. And I'll be honest, I was probably the one that bullied it. But for a more advanced look at the outline of the character, the original just has a lot more straight of a face and looks a lot more like a dinosaur, whereas the other one looks a lot more like a pathetic bird. The last detail I'll mention, which requires a very skilled eye to spot, is the claws and toes. When this person was 3D printing this figure, they forgot the detail that this was a prototype. As if you look at the catalog shot, you can tell the toes and fingertips are not painted, but are on the fake one. Now, if things were not tricky enough as they were, it somehow gets even more difficult. Now we will be looking at the Kratosaurus. This was another figure from the Chaos line that never released and wasn't even mentioned on any catalog shots. The only way we actually know about it is from a private collector showing us a pre-production drawing and someone taking real photos of it. So thankfully for this one, we have good high quality photos to compare, which makes this scammer all the more ballsy to claim to have an original one of these. For starters, let's take a look at color. One is clearly a white unpainted test shot, and the other desperately tried to look like a unpainted test shot, but obviously went up someone's rear end. Another horribly dead giveaway is the face itself. The face on the original is extremely stylized. There's scars, there's skeletal parts, there's obvious details that show this is a battle-hardened dinosaur. And you can just see the cartoony elements to it. And everything kinda has a place and reason when it comes to the design of this. The most critical detail here though is around the jaw. Notice the kind of curve and circle on the cheekbone. This was Kenner trying to figure out how they could engineer the figure to open and close its mouth. which is clearly not prevalent on this fake. And speaking of lack of consistency, why does the fake one have a different colored eye when the original clearly did not have any color whatsoever? And speaking of other inconsistencies, notice how on the original there are cut parts to it, almost like you could detach and reattach. This was Kenner trying to experiment with multiple ideas as to how to design and create this figure. If this so was one of these true original holy grail of prototypes, wouldn't they have kind of a similar line or detachment process to them? Why does this one not have that detail? Speaking of other minor details, if we look at the leg prevalent in the photo the private collector uploaded, you can see the classic Jurassic Park slashes and even a really cool detail of a bite mark. Probably bitten by another dinosaur, compared to the fake one where it looks like it was bit by a 5-year-old child and still took significant damage. Overall, this figure in particular probably is a one of a kind, especially with these interesting details like the detaching of the head process. They wouldn't make multiple of them if they couldn't properly agree on a proper design for it. They would only do that if they were confirmed on a design, like on Ultimatosaurus, where they were clear with what they wanted the character to look like, so they made multiple molds, and it just didn't release. Now, before we get to the final boss, the creme de la crop of the entire video, I do want to go over the second to last one, which was the Chaos Effect Trike, also known as Flash Trike. I'm not going to go over this one because he does say it's a fake, so I'm going to give him a pass on this one, and I'm very glad he did, because boy would I have not gone easy on this one. So he dodged a bullet there. But where he doesn't get to dodge a bullet is claiming to have what is considered the holy grail of holy grails when it comes to Jurassic Park figures, the one and only legendary Trike figure. This is another one that was very difficult to authenticate properly. But like I said before, there are some core details we can look at to shut this one down. This is a rather famous figure when it comes to Jurassic Park collecting. This was a figure that did not release because Kenner was concerned that the horns on the Triceratops would potentially impale a kid or poke their eye or something like that, which is a little bit of paranoia, but if you look at the horns on this thing, it's reasonable to think that. But what makes this by far the most difficult one to authenticate is because it is the most convincing one. However, what isn't a good start for our antagonist here is the fact that this figure has been remade more than any of the Jurassic Park prototypes because of its well-known likeness. When you look at the fake and a real from the distance, it is almost impossible to tell the differences. Luckily for him, the original photo side-by-side comparison of the original to the fake doesn't really give us a lot of intel to authenticate this one. The horns look really similar, the eye part looks similar, and even the weird lighting color part looks dangerously similar. But the first giveaway is the horns and nose. While they are a strikingly convincing detail, if you look really closely, it doesn't look like the original paint for the horns. Whereas if we look at an original one, you can tell that the plastic was molded that way, meaning you cannot really remove the paint of it because that is how it originally was molded and created. Speaking of the horns, if we take a look at the top of them on the fake, you notice this weird line on them? This is clearly not prevalent on the fake, and it looks a lot more rubbery on the fake one than on the real one, which has plastic to it. This also could be applied to the horn nose and beak. Speaking of paint, a lot of parts of this figure are just really weird. Do you notice these kind of white stains on them? I wanted to rub those off and say, oh, it's just maybe the age of the figure losing paint. But yet again, it looks really white. And if this was an original, wouldn't it be a lot more gray? As if you look at original photos of unpainted ones, you can see it is fully gray. But I'm gonna let this detail slide just because it is way too hard to tell on that one. Now, apart from those minor little details I mentioned, everything else is very convincing. There was almost nothing I could really say about the tent, but yet again, the tent isn't that hard to fake, and it doesn't help that it is blurry in the catalog photo. However, the person who made this fake missed one fatal detail, a very, very minor one, that pretty much shuts down this as a original. This detail, however, was extremely difficult to find, but thankfully I was able to find it from a video made many years ago from Toy Hunter. In 2010, Toy Hunter made a video about Jurassic Park toys, where he sells numerous prototypes which he got from a real Kenner employee, who has also helped him authenticate many rare Kenner prototypes like the rocket-firing Boba Fett. Near the end of the video, Toy Hunter reveals the trikes to the collectors he wishes to sell it to. And we get a few seconds of the figure on footage. And there is a very interesting detail that I have not seen anywhere else on this real original prototype seen in this video. If you look at the back of the head, you might notice that the back fin part is a similar color to the horns and spikes that orbit around his head. A detail that is clearly not prevalent in this fake one. Now, I'm going to admit that detail might be a bit of a stretch, more than I would like it to. However, it is a lot more inconsistent on the fake one when you look at the real one. But let's just quickly recap here. Let's say all of these were real. Like I said before, why wouldn't you just sell these individually? I did confront him about this, and he did say that the listing was only for one of the figures and that he would change that. So we'll see if he actually does that or not. Should have been done in the first place, but better late than never. But let's just say on the off chance one of these was real. I would be seriously concerned for these artifact of toys because this person is an absolute slob and it appears you can't even walk on his bedroom floor. This person is clearly incapable of taking care and handling rare, one-of-a-kind prototypes from what I am seeing. There should be a rule: if you own something of that extreme rarity and specialty, you should clean your goddamn room. I mean, Jesus Christ. Boxes all over, opened ones, unopened action figures just on the floor. I mean, this is ridiculous. Now, I get it. Everyone's room can get messy, but to hold rare prototypes like that, it is completely unacceptable to have them in conditions like this. So I am actually happy that all of these figures are most likely fake, because if they were real, like I said, I would be seriously concerned for the existence of these ultra rare figures. Now, we might be asking, where did he get these figures? And that I unfortunately cannot say. But he claims to have found them on Facebook Marketplace, where people just had spare versions of them lying around. But if I were to speculate, and knowing how this person has not said many true things, and considering how unbelievably messy his room is, I am guessing he just 3D printed these figures, put them in a box, and said, hey, look at this Facebook listing I found. And maybe this is just really nitpicky, but doesn't it just seem a little too convenient that the bubble wrap seen in the listing he found just so happens to be in the other videos were in his room. Maybe these are pictures of him receiving the items after the fact, but it's not entirely known, and it doesn't really matter because none of these items are real. Even though he didn't make a YouTube video on it, there was one more figure he claimed to have, which was this Stego Spinus prototype. Hey, I said it correctly. But considering all the other ones I've been able to prove as fakes, I don't see how this one's gonna be any different, and honestly, it would just be too exhausting just to state the obvious at this point. Now, one thing I do want to bring up before this video ends. There is a possibility that the person uploading these videos is just a kid who got scammed and is going around thinking he has an original. Which, if that is the case, that is extremely unfortunate, and I am very sorry. But considering you are trying to sell these for $18,000 or $4,000 starting auction, I have a very hard time believing that this is on accident. So unless you have receipts, otherwise I think you are a scammer and trying to take advantage of someone. And that is just unacceptable. And I really hope no one buys your listing, but knowing how stupid people are on eBay, someone probably will. But to the people who are fairly smarter than that, here is a warning for you to stay away from listings like this. If there is another listing or something you would like me to look at to help properly authenticate, I would be more than happy to take a look at it. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you for watching, and I hope it was educational and formal for you. And if there's anything or critiques you have with the video, please let me know. I would love to improve my videos. Thank you and have a good one.